Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a 19 Shadowmoon burial grounds that me and my friends did uh, that we plus 2'd. So spoiler alert, sorry I should have said that before I said we plus 2'd it. But as far as dungeons go, this expansion, this one is like super free. So there was a post on the WoW competitive WoW subreddit recently that talked about the actual numbers for how many of these dungeons have been timed. So for all of the dungeons, I'll leave a link to the post in the description. For all of the dungeons in Season 1 of Mythic Plus in Dragonflight, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and they were looking at plus 20s, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds has been timed more frequently. Well, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds and Court of Stars are the two dungeons that have been timed the most frequently, and it's like by far. So timing a 19 Shadowmoon Burial Grounds is way, way easier than something like Ruby Life Pools, for example, or Azure Vaults. Those are two dungeons that are much harder, even though it's the same level, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit play so that I'm not talking so much before any action starts happening. Um, but yeah, so basically, like I said, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. Also, why is he doing this? Why does he make a 26-second pull timer? Who needs that much time? Nobody. Nobody needs that much time. We're all just standing here doing nothing this whole time. Anyway, yeah, so like I said, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, this dungeon is crazy easy. None of the bosses are like super hard to do. There's not very many hard mechanics. There's a lot of easy trash. There's not a lot of trash that has like really difficult mechanics to deal with, or like you need a bunch of kicks or anything. Pretty much everything in this dungeon is like not hard. There are a lot of dungeons, as you can see right here, we're doing the shroud skip. Let me pause. Let me finish what I was saying about the dungeon thing, and then I'll talk about the dungeon. So, in a lot of dungeons, the thing that makes them hard isn't that every single pack is crazy, crazy hard, and it's just like all around hard. Usually what makes a dungeon hard is that there's one boss who is just crazy overtuned, or there's like two packs that you have to pull no matter what. They're like forced packs, and they're crazy hard. Like, for example, Temple of the Jade Serpent, the very last pull before the last boss is just insanely hard for no reason, right? The fact that that pull still exists, it's all one pack, so you can't really, like, you can CC some stuff, like root something and then not have to pull it, but the fact that that pack is all together is insane. It's just like, it just takes the difficulty of that dungeon and makes it way, way harder, because to survive that pack you need like a ton of kicks, and they're all doing a ton of damage, and it has those infestor shaws that spawn those little shaws that explode and do a bunch of damage. And so it's like a crazy healing requirement. Anyway, so Shadowmoon doesn't have any of that. A lot of the other dungeons in this expansion, in this first season specifically, do. So, now to get into the key, like I said, we shrouded past this first pack, and that's something that we can only do because we have a rogue, right? So if your group isn't running a rogue, you'll have to pull these guys. Not a huge deal. It just means that you have to pull something later if you shroud this, and you don't have to pull it if you don't shroud this. So if you end up trying to do our route in this video, and you don't have a rogue, so you don't shroud these guys, then just remember that later on in the dungeon, there's going to be a pull that we do that you don't have to do. So, and yeah, it's not a huge deal. That first pack isn't like crazy, crazy dangerous or anything. We just shroud it because we would rather pull something else later on. Our tank Bus right here, he listed a route at the beginning of the key, and we're like, yeah, let's go do that. And then something to mention, see this void spawn? If you shroud past that first pack, there's some RP that happens at the beginning of this dungeon that makes this void spawn disappear. So you'll notice we're just going to stand here for a while because this void spawn is here. If we had to pull this pack with the void spawn, it would be a lot harder, like way harder. Void spawns by themselves are pretty hard. See, it disappeared, so now we're going to go in and fight these guys. But yeah, void spawns by themselves are pretty hard. On top of all these guys would make it even harder. That Cry of Anguish, you just need to make sure that you're standing outside of the circle. it's going to jump to, I'm pretty sure it's the furthest player, but it could be, no, it's not the furthest player, definitely, because it just jumped to him and I was further away. So it jumps to a random player, maybe a random player at range. Still not sure about that. Whoever it jumps to, it's kind of random, so you just need to make sure that you're watching your feet at all times, and when it jumps to you like that, you just walk out of the way. It's not a huge deal. I've never been hit by it, so I'm not actually sure what it does if you do get hit by it. My guess is that it's a fear, kind of like Psychic Scream, because it's called Cry of Anguish. Then we come into these corpse skitterings. This is just like a pad pack. Honestly, oh man, I love all these ghosts. It's just a pad pack, nothing important here, so you just kill it as fast as you can. I like to save a Shadow Crash for it, because Shadow Crash does a decent amount of damage in AoE, and then, yeah, obviously you just spam Mind Seer. In a pack like this, where it's going to die pretty quickly, we have a Warrior and a Rogue. Both of these people are going to do a decent amount of AoE damage on demand. The Warrior especially, if he pops his CDs and everything, can do... I've seen Warriors do 1,000,000 DPS in an AoE pull, so... These skitterlings, I should say, aren't going to last long enough that I should be dotting all of them. You don't want to go through and be casting Vampiric Touch, Vampiric Touch, Vampiric Touch, right? All you need to do is generate as much insanity as possible and then spam Mind Seers into these guys if you want to do any damage to them at all. Also, you can use your Dark Star, as I like to call it. I think it's actually... Divine Star is what it's actually called, but I like to call it Dark Star because it's the shadow version. Also, one thing I'll say is the shadow version of that spell looks so much cooler than the Holy and Disc version of it. It's just like way better, so I feel bad for anybody who doesn't play Shadow but plays the other two, because your star looks lame and my star looks cool. So anyway, then we're moving into these reanimated ritual bones, I think they're called. Nothing very scary here. There's some tank slash things that come out. And then right here, you'll notice our tank is running away from these guys. Line of sight's our healer for a second. That was the holy star that you just saw, but it's kind of hard to see because it's not very cool. But then, yeah. So mostly with that pack, nothing crazy. And that's going to be the case for, like, this whole dungeon, really, is that there's nothing crazy to talk about because there's really nothing crazy to worry about. So then we're going into the first boss, and I didn't play this perfectly. As you can see, I used, it might be a little hard to see down here. Also, I need to redo these icons for my UI. I haven't gotten to that yet, so they might not be super helpful, but I pressed Mindbender, and then I immediately went into Void Form. You do not want to do that. What you want to do is Shadow Crash to put your dots on. I'm playing Void Form, so this rotation is a little bit different if you're playing Dark Ascension. But basically, I'm going to put my dots on. I'm going to press Mindbender, and then you should Shadow Word Death, and then you should Mind Blast, and then you should get into Void Form. And then once you're in Void Form, your next spell should be Devouring Plague, immediately followed up by a Mind Games. And then from that point, you go back into basically the same rotation as Shadowlands, where it's basically Mind Blast, Devouring Plague, Void Bolt, Mind Blast, Devouring Plague, Void Bolt, or something like that, where you're doing 2 spells between every Void Bolt, basically. So as you can see, I did do the Devouring Plague Mind Games thing as soon as I got into Void Form, but like I said, I didn't press Shadow Word Death or a Mind Blast charge outside of Void Form, which means that my Mindbender is now falling off when it shouldn't be. I didn't get as much time out of my Mindbender that I could have. And you can see that I'm doing 83k DPS right now, so it's not like messing up the rotation in that way was so detrimental that I'm doing no damage. I'm on top of the DPS meter right now, but I could have done more, and that's really what you should be focusing on. You shouldn't be focusing on how does my damage compare to everybody else as much as you should be focusing on how does my damage compare to the most damage I could be doing, right? Really, a lot of people get caught up in, oh no, the DPS meter, and let me just say real quick, when this thing comes out, you just need to stand on one of these light moons. As far as I'm aware, And I am not positive, but as far as I'm aware, it doesn't matter which moon you stand on as long as you're standing on one of them. But if you die in your dungeon and it's because you stood on the wrong one, please come back to this video and leave a comment and yell at me, because I've done this a bunch of times, and every time I've just stood on a random moon and I've never died. And I would like to know if that's incorrect. Anyway, so yeah, like I'm saying, a lot of people get really caught up in the damage meter, especially at the end of the dungeon. Like, if you look at the damage meter right now, you'll see I'm at the bottom on the overall DPS meter. And a lot of people will see that and be like, "Oh man, I'm doing really poorly." Or, "Oh man, I wish I was doing better." And there is a little bit of value in that, right? It is important to know, as a like a class balance type of thing. Like, it's important to know that, yeah, this warrior in general, if assuming I'm playing perfectly and the warrior is playing perfectly, then yeah, this warrior is doing more damage than me. Maybe in the future, a warrior has a better idea to bring than a shadow priest, right? There is some value in that kind of looking at the DPS meter, right? But for the vast majority of people, and I would even argue that for pretty much everybody, maybe literally everyone, you're not playing perfectly, right? I'm definitely not playing perfectly, like I already mentioned on this boss fight, and I think even the very, very top end players of the entire game, I'm talking like Echo players, Liquid players, the BDG players, the people at the very, very top, even those people are not playing perfectly all the time, let alone most of the time. I would even argue that a lot of the time they're playing very optimally, but I think it's very unlikely that they're playing perfectly even a majority of the time. So, because of that, it's way more important to look at the DPS meter as a self-analysis tool and less of a, okay, I'm winning right now in overall, so I don't need to change anything. I'm doing as good as I could be doing. I'm winning, so that's all that matters. That's not true. That isn't all that matters. What really matters, and it comes down to what your priorities are as far as what your goals are when you're doing dungeons and things. If your goal is just to have fun, do as much damage as you can, but it doesn't really matter. You're not like trying to go for the title or trying to, whatever you're not trying to do. You're not playing super competitively, then sure, it doesn't really matter. You don't really have to worry as much about doing everything perfectly, right? But if you are trying to improve and you are trying to push higher and higher keys and you're looking for ways to do better, right? Then obviously it's important to look at it and say, okay, even though I was the number one DPS overall by 30,000 DPS, I still did not do everything perfectly. Right there, I mass dispelled those shields on those guys. I'm pretty sure our healer Squishy Octo actually mass dispelled them first. But those shields on those guys, you can mass dispel them. You can even individually dispel them with Dispel Magic. And that makes these guys a lot easier. These death blasts that they cast, those are one of the key things in this dungeon that you do need to kick. So make sure you're kicking those. We've got our tank and our rogue are kicking them, and we have a warrior. We've got 3 melee kicks, which a lot of groups have. Pretty much most groups have that. So I'm going to kick very seldomly. And we're all in Discord for this key, so we're talking about it. If there's ever a time where a kick needs to happen, but they don't have their kicks. One, I'm watching this interrupt thing. This is Omni CD, by the way. If you don't have that add-on, it shows you these things, and it shows you things like this. It also shows you things like this. So, super helpful add-on. I'm watching these, so if there's ever a kick that's going to go off that needs to be kicked, I can know that I'm the only one who can kick it, and I can kick it for them, right? Anyway, so... man, I forgot what I was saying. I'm pretty sure I was talking about the self-analysis thing. Yeah, I was saying, like, even if you're the top DPS in the dungeon by, like, 30,000 DPS, it's important, and this is one of the reasons why I suggest that people record themselves playing, like I am right now. It's important that you look at your performance and you compare yourself to the ideal, right? And it can be hard to know what the quote unquote ideal is, right? That part of that is just, and something I do here is bad. As you can see, everybody ran up on this edge right here and avoided this little tomb. I think this is like a headstone. Everyone ran up on this edge, but I didn't. I just walked over this thing, which made this guy spawn. You can skip this guy, this exhumed spirit. You could just walk around him, which means we have to kick him. It's going to take some extra time. He doesn't give any count, you can see. So yeah, you want to skip those guys when you can. Also, one other thing I'll say before I get back to... Sorry, I keep pausing, and sorry I keep going on so many tangents. But this guy, please make this model one of the Shadow Priest pets. Can you imagine if our Mindbender, or if our Idol of Yogg-Saron guy, if he looked like this? That would be so much cooler than what he actually looks like. And I don't want to be like... I don't want to crap all over the design team and the art team or whatever. I do think Shadow Priest looks really good in general, but I just don't know why this guy can exist. This model exists in the game, and it looks super cool for a shadowy aesthetic, right? And it's not a Shadow Priest thing, right? If this was a Shadow Priest thing, like if this was Mindbender, can you imagine? That'd be so cool. And maybe not that big. Maybe it could be the size of a regular Mindbender. But can you imagine? Like the Shadow Fiend, look at that Shadow Fiend right there. You might barely be able to see him. That's Squishy Octo's Shadow Fiend. My Mindbender's in the back. But like if this thing was that guy, it'd just be so cool. And I get it. It's like cool to have it as like a boss thing because it's so cool. You want to have it, be infrequent or whatever. And it is cool, but that's just my 2 cents. I would love to have that be a Shadow Priest pet. Anyway, so yeah, like I was saying, it can be hard to know what the quote-unquote ideal is as far as what to compare yourself to. And really, I don't have any, get-rich-quick tips for that. Like, you can't just know, right? You're already one step ahead if you're watching this video because you're already looking for people who know things to tell you things, right? You're looking for ways to improve. And so that's already one step up. Really, your best option is to, find as many people who stream or who make YouTube videos or who write guides. A lot of people undervalue the written guides that people make. I would say join the Priest Discord server. There's a lot of information out there. And all you need to do is figure out where it is and then start to consume as much of that information as possible, right? And then on top of that, actually play the game. The more you play the game, the more familiar you'll get with different situations and with different... as you can see, that guy way back there, that Exhumer, we had to kick him in, so I went over and kicked him. That's something our tank called out while we were playing. Anyway, the more familiar you will get with different situations, and the better you'll be able to handle different things. And so yeah, so that's basically my spiel about the the DPS meter is, and I'm sorry it took so long to get around to this, but yeah, basically look at the DPS meter as a way to improve yourself and not so much as a way to compare yourself to other players, especially when it comes to like feeling bad about it, right? If you look at the DPS meter and you're last on the DPS meter, maybe even the tank beat you, right? You're doing really poorly. And you look at the DPS meter and all you get out of that is you feel bad and it makes you not want to play the game anymore. That's not useful, right? All that does is make you feel bad. So what you should really be doing, and a lot of this is like a mental game that you have to kind of decide to do, a conscious decision, right? But if that is the case with the DPS meter, you need to remind yourself that, okay, I'm obviously doing something wrong. Is this FPS super weird or something? It feels really weird. Like a little choppy. Anyway, you need to look at the DPS meter and you got to say, okay, the point of this DPS meter is not to make me feel bad. And the opposite is true. It's not to just make you feel good. The whole reason that you have a DPS meter, okay, is so that you can see how you're doing and you can identify ways to improve. Look at it as a tool. Don't look at it as a way to flex or a way to feel bad about yourself. Just that one change just changing your mindset about the DPS meter like that, just that one change, I think can provide so many tools for getting better at the game, and it's a better way to look at your performance in general. And like I said before, it kind of depends on what your goal is with the game. If you want to get really good, if you want to get a lot better, then it's more important for you to look at ways to improve and less important for you to, just flex or feel bad about yourself. If you're more casual and you really are not trying to be like super, super good, then you have a more room for that kind of stuff. More room for you to be like, yeah, okay, I don't really care so much about, doing the rotation perfectly. So really, to me, the DPS meter is just a way for me to, DM my friends in Discord and say they suck at the game and I'm really good, or whatever. And there is definitely a place and a time for that. But my videos are more geared towards people, I think, who are trying to get better at the game. So if you really are trying to get a lot better, then, like I said, it's very important that you identify tools that can help you get better and use them in that way. Thinking, I suck at the game, I'm just not going to play anymore, that kind of thing, is only harmful as far as getting better at the game, right? So it's, like I said, it's just better to look at the DPS meter, as well as like when you're watching a video back. If you're watching a video of yourself that you recorded back, and you're like, dang, why did I make that stupid mistake? Right? Like me walking over that headstone. Why did I walk over that headstone? It's very obviously not what you should do. And there is no argument for why you should be doing it. I should not have done it. I could let that make me feel bad, right? I could be like, dang, I'm a bad player. I shouldn't post this video on YouTube, right? Because I'm going to be embarrassed. Because people are going to see that my overall is really low. And people are going to see that I walked over that headstone like an idiot, right? But I could let it do that. Or I could say, I don't care what people think. What I'm really going for is to get better at the game. And to get better at the game, it's important that I make these videos where I'm, analyzing my play and I'm looking at stuff like that, right? So that'll be the end of that spiel. Now that we're almost done with the dungeon, we're halfway through the dungeon, and I haven't talked about like any of the dungeon basically. Right there, I almost gripped him. You can see, if we go back, right there, I can see this body slam comes out. I'll pause it when it happens. This body slam comes out, and our tank isn't moving. And I noticed probably right here that he got knocked off, right? And so I immediately try to reach over and grip him ASAP, but I'm just half a second too slow. I also, that's interesting. I also if I had just moved my mouse to his unit frame, I probably would have caught him. But instead, I reached my mouse up to his body and try to grab him and then move down to his unit frame, if you watch. And that's see, I go body, nope, and then I try to grab him, and you shouldn't do that. You should, especially if you know who it is getting knocked back, like it's almost certainly going to be your tank who gets knocked back by this body slam because it targets the tank when it goes off. Because I knew it was going to be the tank, I know where my tank's unit frame is, so I should have immediately moved my mouse if I wanted to make that grip, which would have been a sweet highlight play. If I wanted to make that grip, I should have just immediately moved my mouse from up here straight to his unit frame and pressed my life grip button. But instead, I tried to grab his body, which is really like my go-to most of the time when I'm trying to life grip somebody, because usually it happens in raid and I don't know who the person is getting knocked back. Really, I should have just gone to his unit frame. Anyway, these carrion worms, I think they're called. Carrion. I think it's carrion, like a carrion feeder bird. These carrion worms, they do this fetid spit, and that's about it. And that body slam, I guess. The fetid spit only ever goes on the tank, so you never have to worry about it. This body slam will only ever go on the tank as well. You do need to worry about it just because if your tank is standing in between you and this guy, then the line will go on you and you need to move out of the way. The other reason to keep that in mind is if anybody gets knocked off, you can save them a lot of time by life gripping them back on instead of just waiting for them to go over to the water jet thing that knocks them up. Something I'll mention here that I haven't seen happen a lot in low keys when I've been doing like alt keys or rat keys or whatever. This Corpse Breath gets baited on a ranged player, and you need to stack it. Well, you don't need to, but this is something that a lot of high-end players will do. You want to stack it close to melee, close enough that when you stand in it, you can still melee the boss, so that when he does his inhale later, your melee players don't have to run so far away that they can't be doing any damage. So you can see this warrior, he's not going to get eaten, but he is going to be sitting here smacking the boss like crazy still, right? Which is very important, especially the higher you go when bosses, especially if this was tyrannical, you need as much boss damage as you can get. And so yeah, you want to bait these close. And then we have a body slam go off, and right here I need to watch this because yeah, I remember this happening. To me, it looks like I am not in this body slam, but I get hit by it. So let's see. So this body slam right here, I get hit by this. Although I'm pretty sure the line that it stops at is like here. So it feels to me at least, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe play this back. I can't change the playback speed for me, but maybe play this back at 2.25 speed and tell me if you guys think I should have been hit by this. But this body slam goes off, and it hits me for some reason. I felt like this surprised the crap out of me. I felt like I was definitely out of that, but I guess not, obviously. And that's another thing to keep in mind. It's important not to tilt when things like that happen, even if it's very provable that the game was just wrong and I was not in that. You should not let that tilt you. You should really be like, okay, well, I just need to know that, and I put a little marker on my body to say, because our tank is like, where the crap are you, dude? And I just need to say, I'm way over here, come save me, right? And he even can't reach me from there for a minute, but then he's going to get body slammed if he's not careful. He finally comes over and B-reses me. Anyway, and then this Corpse Breath, I should have waited for that to go off before I took the res, because now the Corpse Breath is a mile away from the boss, and this is not where you want it. Like I said, you want it in melee. Anyway, when little game bugs like that happen that cause you a death, or even if my death there wiped the entire key and made it so that we didn't time the key, and this was like the last key we needed for the title or for Keystone Hero or something, right? Even if this was a very important moment and we kind of got screwed over by the game, don't let that tilt you. If you get tilted, it is a choice, right? And obviously, it's really hard to not get tilted when something like that happens, especially in such a key scenario. But really, if you can just use it as a learning experience, if you can just be like, okay, it happened, I cannot change the past. All I can do that will be helpful from this is to say, in the future, instead of giving that mechanic, 5 yards of space like I usually do, I'm going to give it 10 yards of space. I'm going to make sure I'm extra safe, because I thought I was safe and I was not. And I know that, sometimes when I think I'm safe, I am not actually, right? But yeah, again, I would like to go back and watch that at like 2.25 speed to make sure, because I swear I was so far out of it, but it still went off. Something else I'll mention that maybe not everybody knows, this Thundering buff, it gives you increased damage and healing, and as soon as you clear it, that goes away. So you want to, when you can, there's a fine balance on this, but when you can, you want to keep this buff as long as possible before you clear, as long as it's safe, right? So if you're in a really safe spot at the beginning of the buff, but you know it's going to get dangerous near the end of the buff, like maybe you're just starting to pull 3 packs or something, then in that case, maybe it is better to clear early. But a lot of the time, if you can wait till the last second to clear, you'll get more DPS and more healing out of it. Although, like I said in my last video, do not, in 99% of the cases, do not life grip somebody to you at the last second just so you can greed more damage, right? It's almost always just going to hurt your relationships. It's going to make people feel like you're an idiot. And let me go back a second, actually, to talk about this. So these guys, I send out a Shadow Crash here really early. I should have waited like half a second for these plagued bats to get a little closer, because I send out the Shadow Crash, and it misses these 2 plague bats. It just hits the spiders, right? So I should have aimed it up here where the tank was going to be, and instead I have to put Vampiric Touch on both of these guys to make sure they have dots, which means that my initial Mind Seer right there did less damage because, 1, I didn't get the Mastery bonus from having both dots on both targets, and 2, neither target was spawning Shadowy Apparitions from my Mind Seer, right? So I did a lot, maybe not a ton, but significantly less damage because they didn't have dots on them. That's another thing that I'll mention. I didn't do it with the Skitterlings, right? Like with the Skitterlings, I didn't dot all of them. I sent out a Shadow Crash in the first pack, and then I used my Mind Seer, but in the second pack, I didn't dot any of them even. It might be worth it to, put a Shadow Word Pain on 1 or 2 of them. You don't want to sit there and cast a bunch before you Mind Seer, but in general, when you Mind Seer a giant pack, you will do more damage if they have dots on them. Because 1, your dots will be ticking, obviously. 2, and then I would like to talk about this pack too, so let me pause for a second. 2, you're going to get the Mastery bonus from having each of your dots on the target. For every dot, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain, and Devouring Plague you have on a target, you get your Mastery percentage more damage towards that target for all of your spells. So if you've got Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain on a target, let's say you've got 10% Mastery, which is really low. Excuse me, sorry. Let's say you have 10% Mastery. If you have Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain on a target, then while you're Mind Searing, your Mind Seer will be doing 20% more damage to that target. And all it takes is 1 global, right? 1 Vampiric Touch. Or, in the ideal scenario, you can get a bunch of Vampiric Touches out by sending out 1 Shadow Crash, right? So it is worth knowing that the more... And the same is true for like Void Form. If you're in Void Form, you automatically get the maximum benefit from your Mastery on all targets. That's just a quality of Void Form. When you enter Void Form, it automatically gives you that. And Void Form also gives you increased spell damage. So your spells during Void Form are going to be stronger because of the increased spell damage, but even stronger because of the maximum Mastery, that you get from it. Okay, so now we're pulling these 2 Void Spawns. These are the last pull before the boss. Oh, and we almost 3-chested this, actually. That's interesting. These guys are pretty dangerous. This Void Pulse that they cast, it does a lot of damage, especially because this is fortified. Yeah, like you can see, that hurt a lot. I almost died. As you can see, yeah, like, wow, it's crazy. This is a fortified and a 19, which means these guys are probably more dangerous than the last boss even. Although I will mention, on this last boss, I make another critical mistake that is super avoidable and really bad play by me. If you'll notice, I've been casting these Power Word Lives on myself. It's a little different with a priest as your healer. Typically, I would say that you always want to snipe yourself with a Power Word Life. If you're like really, if you're low enough that the Power Word Life gets the reduced cooldown, right? If you use it when you're below, I think it's the same as Shadow Word Death, but the opposite. If you're below 20% health and you cast Power Word Life, then instead of it being a 30-second cooldown, it's just a 10-second cooldown. When you're playing with non-priest healers, you always want to snipe yourself with that so that you can have it back up in 10 seconds, right? And it heals for a crap ton. It's huge. But if you're playing with a priest healer, then sometimes you might snipe yourself with that. Like right there, I tried to snipe myself, but I missed, so it's a 30-second cooldown. And that's what you need to worry about doing to your healer, right? So because he's a priest, if I snipe myself with a Power Word Life when I'm below 20% HP, and it shoots me above 20% HP, which it almost certainly will, if I do that, at the same time, the priest is trying to do that to me as well, but he's a little bit slower, then his is going to go on a 30-second cooldown, and his is more important than mine, because he needs to use his, he's the healer, right? So he needs to use his on, maybe this warrior who's going to die, or maybe this rogue who's going to die, or maybe himself, right? So if you end up sniping your Power Word Life and messing up his Power Word Life, that is really bad, right? But it's almost impossible to like coordinate that between you and the healer. So I would just say, if you're playing with a priest healer, try to be a little bit slower. Try to give him a couple GCDs, maybe a second or two, as long as you're not going to instantly die. Obviously, if you're going to instantly die, it's better that you snipe the healer than you die, right? But if you can, give him a little time to try and power word life you himself, and then if he's still not doing it, oh, and right here, I think I do this rotation correctly, right? Yeah, mostly. I didn't have mind games up, I don't think. But yeah, so... oh yeah, and that's something else I should mention about this boss. Okay, so... excuse me, sorry. So yeah, like I was saying, let him try to power word life you first. If he doesn't do it for, 1,000, 2, 1,000, okay, he still hasn't done it, I'm going to do it to myself, right? That's fine. If you're not playing with a priest, do it immediately, because you're not going to mess up their power word life, right? There's no other spell that I know of that requires you to be below 20% HP to give them a huge reduced cooldown. So it's just a power word life thing, as far as I know. So you should be the one doing it and let your healer worry about other stuff, right? It helps your healer because they don't have to heal you, right? Okay, so on this boss, he casts this circle thing. I forget what it's called. He has a frontal called Malevolence. This Omen of Death maybe is that circle thing. Let's see if I hit play. Yeah, it's Omen of Death. So you want to bait these. They go on the farthest target, and you want to be standing far enough away that it's not hitting everybody, right? And they do fall off damage. So the further away from them you are, the less damage you take from them. I did a pretty bad job of this in this key. And like I alluded to earlier, there are some other mistakes that I make, but we'll talk about those when they come. So for example, when this comes out, yeah, I should be walking far away, and really I should be trying to get away from both of these, although the damage they're doing at this point is not very much. And then me walking between them like this, though, is a really not a great move, because now I'm taking a lot of damage from both. Our tank marks one of these Ritual of Bones guys. It's just important that you kill one. Don't worry about killing the other ones. And I would also say there is an urge, I'm sure, to dot all of these so that you could get a little extra damage, Maybe you're going to get a cheeky Shadow Crash out while they cross over the boss so that you can refresh your dots on the boss, but also get the added benefit of putting dots on two of them. I would say that should not be your priority. Like I said before, don't worry about doing the most damage ever on the meter. You should really be prioritizing killing the boss, right? So this is the priority target right now. So all you should care about in this moment is killing this guy and setting up damage for the boss, right? So looking for those little situations where you can pad the meter a little bit, make that priority number 2. Make that actually priority number 3. It should go like this. Priority 1, stay alive. Priority 2, kill the things that need to die. And then you can say, as long as you're doing those 2 things, you'll do really well. So after that, you can do whatever the crap you want. If you want to life grip your friends into mechanics so they die, that could be priority number 3. If you want to pad as much as you can so you've got the nice screenshot for Twitter of the DPS meter, that could be priority number 3. Just make sure that it is priority number 3. Make sure that your priority number 1 is not dying, and your priority number 2 is killing the things that need to die. In this case, I need to not die, so I should not run between these. I ran between these because that was not my number 1 priority. Priority 1 should be not to die, and then priority 2, which I'm doing pretty good at right now, is kill this guy. If this guy doesn't die, we all die. So this should be number 2 priority after staying alive, right? And then who cares what you do after that. Okay, so now we're on this Ritual of Bones guy. The faster we kill him, the better. And then also something I'll mention right here. I think it's right here. No, it's not right here. Maybe it's on the next one. But this graphic for this purple area is not perfect, I've noticed. I've walked into this a couple times when it looks like I'm out of it, right? So I would say give this a little more room than you think you need to. actually most of the like shadowy graphics in this dungeon don't have a very easy to define hard edge. Like this looks like a pretty hard edge, but then you got some like, what's this? You know, does this like curve down? No, it really is like a straight line up to the boss probably. But then why is this graphic coming over the side, you know? So I'd say, yeah, give most of this stuff a little extra room. And it feels really bad when you do kill that guy and you walk through right there. That was a pretty bad bait of this Omen of Death. It's hitting the group decently hard, so our tank is running away, right? I should have been standing further out. It feels really bad when you step into one of those Ritual of Bones after you've killed the guy. Right here, I need to run way far away from this thing. It's trucking me. It can be a little hard to know where to place these things, but there will only ever be 2 of them on the field at a time. Again, because of thundering, I had to clear, right? So I had to get close, or somebody had to run out to me. I decided to get close because I try to play proactively, right? And it ended up baiting this Omen of Death on top of everybody. I think right here is when I get hit by it. Yeah. Yes, this is very clearly... So this is just kind of a hard overlap. This Malevolence cone kind of forces you to either side of this, which is forcing you into these 2 things, right? So, and the Malevolence will only... It'll just target a random player. So it's not like you can bait this super easily. I chose to run to the left. This was definitely incorrect. As you can see, this is me right here, this little purple guy with the arms, in the midst of all this purple stuff. But I'm definitely going to get hit by this Ritual of Bones, and it's not even close, right? Actually, that was kind of close. I saw it, and I tried to cut the corner, but I end up dying to this. This is unhealable. There is no way... You could be in like a super low key and you could be really, really strong. And this thing hurts so bad. As you can see, we last a pretty long time healing this. Hopefully I did press Desperate Prayer. And right there, I was about to power life myself. I maybe could have survived. I was super close, but yeah, I end up falling to that. And that is a feels bad moment. That Ritual of Bones thing usually is not hard to dodge. So... dying to that feels really bad. Right now I should be putting Fortitude back on myself. I should not be running to that other puddle to avoid the first puddle. I put Power Infusion on our warrior. Because we have 2 priests, it doesn't really matter so much who I'm PIing. You're just going to want to PI one of the other 2 DPS. But because we're in Discord, me and the other priest did decide that I would be putting Power Infusion on the warrior and he would put it on the rogue. Just so that we have Power Infusion. And honestly, with 2 priests in a group, you can have Power Infusion on 4 people at the same time. That's pretty cool. Anyway, so that's the end of the dungeon. I know I went on a lot of tangents and things. Let me know if I missed anything that you guys want me to cover in a future Shadowmoon Burial Grounds video. At the time of making this video, my Mythic Plus rating is 1746. We're creeping up on 2,000. Feels good. And I did manage to time a 20. That'll be my next video probably. It's another Court of Stars. But that's going to be the end of this one, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you have any feedback, like I said, of stuff that you want to see in future videos, please leave it down there. I appreciate all the support. If you liked the video, make sure you like. If you liked this video, leave a like. And if you really liked it, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to get notifications for future videos. Maybe join my Discord server. That's also in the description down below. But that's going to be it for me. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!